Hi there. Thanks for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Art Cast show, where a couple of visual storytellers get together, take on various topics that happen to bubble up when one goes on the adventure of communicating, or the adventure of making things that communicate visually. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the other host is...
Hello, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a user experience designer, and I make video games. How's it going, Jerzy?
Doing okay. How are you holding up in Minnesota, where, oh yeah, hey, it is now 40 below, 50 below?
Oh my gosh, we climbed out of that, thankfully. But yeah, we had a couple days of really intensely cold.
At the time of this recording, we're like on the tail end of the polar vortex that everybody's been talking about in the United States, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it was really something pretty serious, and I'm super grateful that like nothing accidental or nothing happened to my house where it's kept its integral shape and was able to have heat and stuff, right? Because it's serious. I mean, those are bad temperatures. Like normal Minnesota jokey cold weather is plenty cold, right? I mean, you can lose a finger, damage your skin pretty bad just with regular cold. But like, yeah, -50 wind chill Fahrenheit, holy moly, that's way beyond.
Yeah.
But you weren't in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's still pretty serious. Cool.
We were not exempt. No, we had our taste of that as well, and it was very, I mean, it still is a little bit intense out there. So yeah, you're right. It was no joke, and it's like no laughing matter when that kind of cold blows through, because warming centers become vital infrastructure, right? This is like literally life or death when it gets that freaking cold. I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah, it's I don't know. That's a different kind of thing to be living with, where you're like, yes, I'm in my normal house with different expectations besides life and death.
Right. Yeah. When I lived in Arizona for almost 5 years, Phoenix, Arizona, and I remember Ann and I would joke. We were just kids, and like we'd be like, if our car breaks down, like on the way to Tucson, we could die, right? Like this is like before we had cell phones, and this is a long time ago. And I remember thinking, like, let's go back to Michigan because I don't want to feel like I could die if the car breaks down. And then like this kind of weather happens, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, we're talking about the weather, Rob. We should be talking about visual storytelling. I'm glad you're okay. I'm very glad you're okay. And
thank you. And I'm very glad you're okay as well. Yeah. Let's see. Actually, I mean, there was a lot of, I wouldn't be surprised if my wife, Kate Shield Stenzinger, and I ended up talking on the Art and Science Punks podcast about this, because we ended up doing a lot of creative projects. Because it was so cold, schools were closed, and lots of normal operations day to day were changed. So I think lightly related, there was some storytelling, some improvising, a little bit of visual storytelling, but yeah, I'll probably unbox that more on a different podcast.
All right, the Art and Science Punks.
But yeah, weather is also useful too. It with just human connection. I think I would have. I know that younger 20s-ish Rob would be like, oh, I don't care about the weather, what's really inside you, man. We've got no time for this stuff. But no, I think there's time for it. It's great, and I'm happy. And I even wasted time talking about time there is for it. Whoa! So
that's great.
There we go.
So this week we decided that we want to talk a little bit about navigating the ambiguities that arise out of big changes in one's life. And what do I mean by that? We've talked a lot in the past about, reflecting, journaling, and whittling, and incorporating a creative endeavor in addition to keeping the lights on, doing the work that, is actually getting traction, and then investing in the work that's actually getting traction while pursuing side projects. And so you talk about it, like, you start thinking about it, there's a certain level of fragility that pops up when you are pursuing so many different threads at the same time, right? And then you introduce life events because that's what happens. Life happens, right?
That's what they say on Jurassic Park, something like that. Um, well, and it's so the dinosaurs find a way, but life is part of the way and gets in the way and whatever of our schedules and well-intended plans to get things done. And so our topic is trying to roll with that. It's like, how do we navigate big change? And I think what's implied in there is not just trying to do the heavy lifting of that topic in particular. I would say with the asterisk of how we navigate big change, and stuff we've noticed. But like there's, as it relates to, I don't know, trying to keep at in some way, shape, or form, some constructive manner of moving ahead on projects.
Yep. All right. Well, then how about I do the thing where I hit the music?
That
And
sounds
what will
great.
it be?
Is it this? All right. Lost in a castle. Lost in a castle.
So big events. What are we talking about? So Greg Schiegel is in the chat, and
Nice.
everybody who's in the chat right now,
Awesome.
Hatter Entertainment is the one who just commented. If you haven't subscribed to Greg Schiegel's YouTube channel, you're missing out. Please do so. Greg posts these great live drawing, like these drawing videos where he does essays while you're watching him draw. So you're getting great art and you're getting great thinking by a really terrific cartoonist. So,
we were just this evening. I was sharing some stuff sketched videos with my daughters.
So
really
cool.
fun. Yep, great.
There you go.
examples
Stuff
of-
sketched.
Exactly. Seeing a thoughtful drawer draw stuff live. Good stuff. Or talk over a pre-recorded drawing.
Right.
So
and Greg mentioned right behind me, if you're watching the video, there's a bunch of bare bookshelves and there are boxes behind me. And some of these boxes, Rob, oh my God.
what's up with these?
What am I going to do with these, Rob? What am I going to do with all of these? It gets worse.
I think
Check
there
this
could
out.
be some.
What am I going to do with? By the way, if everybody, I'm holding up
Bunsen burner
CDs.
type
Now I'm holding up
Whoa!
an iOmega
That's the
disk
rough one
drive.
right there. You can find a drive to read, like whatever. What's the general term for CD-ROM, like laser or light media?
CDRs.
Yeah, but
Optical disc
CDR,
drive.
optical media. But a zip drive. Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then little mini CDs. I don't even know where these came from. Yeah. Oh, it's Charles is in there saying 3.5 disc. Yep, got those too. I got backups going all the way back to like 1999, 2000, somewhere in the neighborhood. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that stuff. Anyway,
old media.
Old media. The reason why I have to do this, reason why I'm packing up, is because, and I announced this on the Fabulous Secrets microcast I post on my Patreon, and then also on my Instagram and Facebook and so on. But, Rob, you've heard of this place, the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, yes?
I have. It sounds amazing.
It's a pretty amazing place. It is a museum with the largest collection of original comic book art in, I believe, the world. Comic books, comic strips, the original art pages. And they have, the entire run of Calvin and Hobbes' original art is in this building on the campus of Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. As we scroll down on their main website page, we go to the blog. Why, what's this?
Hey, I know that person.
Yes, welcoming Ann Drozd as BICLM Museum Coordinator. So Ann accepted a position at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum. I'm very excited. However, this means that I have to move from Ann Arbor to Columbus, which is, I've lived in Ann Arbor for 15 years now, which is like, I can't believe I even saying that, 15 years, holy cow. Lived in this house for 11 of those 15 years. Turns out 15 years, you can accumulate a lot of stuff. Even if you live a frugal life, you're still gonna like people giving you gifts and things, right? Um, you're gonna accumulate some materials. So it's like it's this. I have 2 weeks to get the house packed up and move into our new place in Columbus. Um, I got a 40-page comic deadline I'm currently working on. I'm also teaching 4 days a week, 5 days, no, 5 days a week, until the end of March. So there's going to be this period where I'm living up here, she's living down there, um, and there's this whole stress of what's the order of operations, right? What has to come first? Like today, I had to talk with a real estate agent about putting my house on the market. Had to go apartment hunting to figure out where we're going to live down there for a while. Got to contact movers, after we sign a lease, figure out what day we move in, then contact movers so I can get some strong young men and women and whoever to pick up all my heavy things because I'm old and I don't want to do it anymore. Um, so yeah,
It's not trivial. Gosh, that's a list. I mean, any subsection of your list is a big list.
And I don't. I want to make sure.
so
If I can bracket this, I don't want
Okay.
this to be misread as me being like, "Boy, you guys think you got problems? Wait to hear my day." Right? This isn't. This is more of using this as a case in point of like, okay, this is something we're thinking about right now. So how do we navigate these situations? Because you've been through this before too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, certainly, and anything from job changes to moving to having a kid, or I mean, life events, big life events happen. I mean, if you choose to get married, or if you end a marriage or whatever. I mean, there's lots of things that fit under this category of like some pretty significant change. And even if the positive side of it, I mean, there could be so many things you can be immensely grateful for, but like your day-to-day operations are going to be not what you're accustomed to for a good chunk of time. And I guess I don't mean to overly, I'm not trying to be the hype it up type hype man over here, but I'm I'm acknowledging like that's really a lot. And um, even there's lots of good and excitement wrapped in there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's all super great stress, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh,
mhm.
I can't believe I get to be married to this person who's going to work in this amazing institution, this magnificent building that have been going to every year for like the last 7 years because I just like to be in its presence, right? It's this giant marble structure that says comics is a celebrated endeavor here, right? It's the greatest thing in the world, right? Like, and I'm so proud of Anne and like all the hard work she did to like make this opportunity happen. It's all really good stuff, right? There's not even a shred of resentment about the stress we're going through, but it's stress because a lot of stuff has to happen at the right time, in the right order, and very rapidly, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's some mention as far as to do. Let's see. Someone mentions that they work for a health or for insurance company, and I'm
Oh, that
wondering
was
if
from
if that's related to knowing and or mapping out these kind of stressful events. Because let's see, they might know about the Holmes and Ra scale of stress. You ever come across this?
no. This is new to me, so let's tell me about it, Rob.
This is this is one of those things where let's say one of these things comes up for you and you're like, why do I feel off? I think there's a lot of you can look at a list like this, which is based on research, which you can think it's really good to think about like um, the methods used to come up with theories and uh, how people are proving their hypotheses or disproving them or whatever. But like it seems like enough diligence was done where this is interesting, and all it is really, it's a list of things, and then the list of things have a rating, and so it's all life events, things like the bottom of the list is minor violation of law, uh, or major holiday,
Mm.
vacation, and then going up toward the middle of the list, beginning or end of school, a spouse starts or stops work. Maybe you have an outstanding personal achievement, and then maybe you jump up on the harder, challenging part of the list. Maybe you gain a new family member, or you get married, or you got dismissed from work, or maybe you got put in prison, or um, death of a spouse is like at the top. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you can like some of these things are just stuff that happens. I mean, many months on the calendar have holidays, right? But holidays mean some other some disruption to your normal, your day to day, what have you, that could have complications. And so let's say you use this list as a like an inventory, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, I've got one of those and two of those and one of those, and you add it up, and I don't know, I'm this would
Yeah.
not be a fun Facebook game, but I could see it being a Facebook game. So if you get a score of 300, you're at risk of illness, or a score of
Wow.
150 to 299. Risk of illness is moderate, but anyway, score of 150 or less, only slight risk of illness. And because they're trying to correlate the idea of like stressful events with likeliness of having some kind of ill that you experience. So I don't know if that's interesting context. Like,
It's a very Rob thing to say, but I think it's a really cool thing to say. That I'm just in the sense of like, I'm feeling things. I'm going to use some kind of rubric to evaluate and qualify and quantify these data points of these experiences and see if it tells me a story someplace, right? A story that maybe I'm missing out on because, as we've said, explored many times in this series of podcasts is when you're in the middle of an experience, you're just trying not to drown. You don't have that extra context of a broader perspective, right? Um, yeah, I could see. Actually, I should sit down and look at this and see what my number is because
I don't think it's as far as it's context. It's a check in to I think where I don't know. It's like permission to or extra in welcomeness to say that it's okay that stuff can get hard and difficult and feel difficult. Um, that's what I find. Where sort of it helps me start a more rich dialogue with my different ways of thinking and feeling. So
mhm.
so yeah, exactly. Because pure emotional side is doing something, and then you know whatever curious analyst side is like, hey, what does this mean? And let's go find you like you said, guilty. I do it. That's what I do.
Well, that was just me just seeing who you are, Rob. It has nothing to do with me making any kind of value judgment about it. Um, but yeah. I mean, because that is part of. So like one of the perspective setting things that I've been going through is sort of like trying to back up and have that broader perspective. But I think that broader perspective, I'm fortunate in that I have enough life experience having moved across the country a couple times, like just Ann and me in a truck kind of thing. Um, we have the experience of actually doing it, so like there's a sense of like, well, we've done this before. We know we can do it. It's going to be crazy stressful, but we can do this, right? And like there's the other more philosophical perspective that I've been keeping of like, well, this is a big transformation. This is like uprooting. And if your roots are deep, then the tearing of the roots should hurt, right?
Mm.
that pain is a signal that the roots were deep and that it mattered it mattered to you what you did here. So like that's another like sort of thinking strategy, sort of perspective setting to like sort of calm me down and keep me from being too worked up about what's going on. Um, but at the same time, it's like you can tell yourself stories, you can have these sort of like thinking strategies, but you still that doesn't. Another thing I've learned as an adult is that sometimes hangups can sneak up on you if you're not ready, right?
Yeah. You doing your best to contextualize and have a conversation with the wiser part of yourself where you're like, oh yes, we've been through this. It's okay that you're a little bit frustrated right now or anxious, right?
Yeah.
But then like so a hang up, like what does a hang up look like?
Well, I could tell you one that I ran into very quickly is not again. It happened without my knowledge of it. It's sort of like just pop up, slap me in the face kind of thing. Um, Columbus is full of cartoonists. A lot of well-known and respected cartoonists live there, and that's a very exciting prospect. I get to go plug into this community and meet a whole bunch of people, hang out with people that I've known for years and some that I have yet to meet. And then in a conversation, it just sort of like came up of like, well, what are you going to do now that you're not going to be teaching Jerzy? Because like that's like we were talking in the chat before the show started. That's like a not insignificant part of my income. Way that I keep the lights on is by teaching comics classes. I'm gonna be starting from scratch, and it came up in this casual way in the conversation, like, well, you're not the unique bird anymore, Jerzy. There's a whole bunch of cartoonists there, right? And like I heard a voice in my head say, "Oh God, they don't need me there. I'm superfluous." And like I wasn't ready for that. The confrontation of that thought. I know I'm not superfluous, Rob, and I know people are going to jump in and say, "But you're a great teacher, Jerzy." Yes, yes, yes. I know. I'm just talking about an errant thought that happened in a hang up that I came across unsuspectedly, right? I've since, had conversations with myself and with others about like what that means and like what I can do, like what my options are when I get there and like how this could be an opportunity for me in a variety of other ways. But that's the kind of thing that can happen where like you're just like having a regular conversation, all of a sudden, boom, something pops up and it hurts emotionally very badly. And you realize, oh, I didn't realize I was worried about that until just now. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I can add to that list too. um, being let's see, I I think as I get older, right, I think about how the here I am, observing social challenges, cis white male in middle age, thinking like, yeah, I want to serve and help and do what I've always been doing, and I want to do it better and at a bigger scale. But then, I look around and I'm like, well, other people got this, and some of them really loudly are like, we don't want you here. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oof, duh, you're not wrong, but I'm a nice person and I'm pretty good at stuff and I can help. And eventually, that side wins, but like there's a time where where that side hasn't won yet. And I think about, oh no, but, changing like where you like kind of a little bit really similar to what you mentioned, like looking at changes in career and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, when is the uh, when is what I'm offering a good fit, and when is it not? And I want to make sure I recognize that and tune into it and gravitate to where it is useful and welcome. But it's that's a fear. And so I think fears, like, it's almost like fears that, I don't know, somehow hang out, and they don't have to be super active all the time. Maybe they are, but they don't have to be. But yeah, totally, stuff can come along and be even close enough of a situation, and then you're dealing with extra things and you're carrying a heavier cognitive and emotional load maybe than your normal day to day. And it's just kind of like, ooh, bam, they'll get you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. I was hanging out with Zach Gialongo last what was it, October, when I went to Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo, and we were talking about some other things in my life that have been going on, personal stuff, and it was a similar kind of story where it's just like it casually just bubbled up in conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was so upset about that until this came up, right? And Zach said, that's the funny thing about being middle-aged. The hangups just pop out and grab you. He's like, because you're not sitting around thinking about your feelings all the time like you did when you were 15.
Oh,
Like,
that's funny.
well
Yeah, I
put,
guess.
Zach.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you, Zach. That's, I think it's a nice little warning sign to, tamp into the soil right next to the, a cliff in my brain.
It's like you're taking a driving test of your emotions, and any second somebody's gonna pop out. Ba-dunk! Oh, don't hit that. Ba-dunk! Don't hit that.
Yeah.
So Charles is in the chat and says, this he thought that we were going to announce that I was going to be a dad when I said like big life changes, big changes. Now, no, I'm not going to be a dad. However, Rob, you are a dad. Let's talk about like that kind of like big life change. Like, how do you
Mm.
work a job, have like pursue your side gigs, your side hustles, and make it and in a sustainable way, emotionally and financially sustainable,
Mm.
and have that ambiguity thrusted into your life or invited into your life, I should say. Shouldn't say
Well,
thrusted.
yeah, I
Like,
mean, it's yeah, and oh gosh, uh, that that adventure for both children was um, I mean, each its own big change, and each of them like uh, you know, n- we let's see, we started to have kids a little bit older, and so we had challenges having kids, right? And that's a crappy ambiguity on the way to it. And then the entire um, you know, uh, in utero process, stressful. Everything there's always a thing. There's always an appointment on the calendar. You're like, come on, let's get there and have it be okay. And it's like, yeah, I guess I'm glad the appointments were there, and I'm thankful for all the advancements. You read the history of like how difficult it's been to have children at different eras, and especially super misogynist society and how doctors would approach it and all that stuff. Pretty crappy things piss you off if you want to read that stuff. But and so you're like working through this, and you're like look, all sorts of judgy thoughts going on, concerns, and then here the child is, and that's amazing and awesome. And then you're like, and now my every thought is to keep you alive and healthy and safe and happy, and knowing that, and I don't mean happy like, and I have to somehow imbue philosophy or something. I don't know how I'm going to make that work, but I guess we got time, right? And so you have all these thoughts of like, wait, all right, now how do I do this job well? Um, among the other things, it's super funny. I remember working on. So, first kid was born, and I remember being in the hospital, sitting on the chair, and anything that if it comes out of my mouth and it sounds like a complaint, dad, the whoever that isn't the mother giving birth, they can shut up because they have the easy jobs. Doesn't matter, right? But here
yep.
I am, probably carrying too much in my backpack, living with I've got a laptop and sketch pads and all this stuff because of my inefficient comics process, and I'm also coding my uh, uh, basically that's when I made Comic Caster. There a way to host my web comic on Google App Engine, where now it's like Google Cloud, whatever. But back in the day, it was Google App Engine, and it basically gave me incredibly inexpensive hosting, but that's not the motivation. I just had a lot of picky ideas of like, I'm a software person and a designer and I have a web comic, and why don't I make my own web, whatever. But I was in the hospital working on that thing and converting it, my comic from WordPress to whatever. In between, making sure my wife's okay, visiting, whatever, tending to the baby, everyone's sleeping. I'm wired as heck coding because I'm like, oh my God, I have a new sense of urgency to, make sure I actually finish things. Yeah, it's crazy and crazy making it fun. But it took practice. So like that big event, but kind of what you said, Jerzy, about how you had moved before, and then it's not the same thing as like a move event has a duration that's greater than like hours or days or whatever, but it's kind of a long event, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I like to sometimes like box things as like, is this an event or is this a lifestyle? And the thing is with kids in general, it's a giant lifestyle change, right? As far as how I bucket stuff like that. And um but in either case, it's kind of like you're practicing and experiencing it over time, and you can get better at it. And that's what's really convenient about kids. It's not like they show up and are like, you know, teach me about difficult, ambiguous things in life right now. It's like, no, I get to figure that out. First, you don't even know what the word poop means. So whatever. I got time. And I did. I learned and adapted in those years, and gained some skill as a dad. But anyway.
So
Time.
I guess like it sounds like part of what we're exploring here is that looking back to past encounters with ambiguity in life events and using that as a resource to say, okay, I've been through something before. Perhaps there's some capacities and some strengths that I gained through that experience that I can apply to this thing. At least having like a little bit of sense of faith. Something that you said before we started recording that I really want to tap into is the word patience, which I was really grateful to hear you say, because one of the things, like, so I described my situation as like, okay, there's all of this timing stuff that has to happen. And like, how does patience figure into, how can you even think about the word patience when you still got to figure out your order of operations. You got to figure out like where everything's going to fall on the calendar. Do you want to jump into that after the ad break?
Okay.
The tease for the second half of the show?
Yeah. Started out with a little patience. Just a little patience.
I'm gonna ask for everybody's patience while we take a break before we get to the second half. So in a minute and 30 seconds, we're going to talk a little bit about patience and some little bit more of the coping strategies that we employ when engaging with the ambiguity of life changes. But before we do that, we got to thank some people who make this show possible, and those people are the folks who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/leanintoart is the website. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. If you say, I believe in Jerzy, I believe in Rob, I believe in what they do, I want to help make the show more sustainable. I'm going to contribute as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/leanintoart. I want to thank 5 people who have been doing exactly that. First up, Sophie Lawson. Thank you, Sophie, for believing in us. You can find Sophie on Twitter at Sophie Lawson Art. Also, thank you to Nathan Seabolt for believing in us and what we do. It means a lot to us, Nathan. And Shane W. Smith, who you can find on Twitter at Shane_W_Smith. Thank you, Shane. Shawnee Redfearn. You can find Shawnee on Twitter at Shawnee Redfearn. Thank you, Shawnee. And finally, the mysterious K, who we still don't know who you are, but we appreciate the fact that you've supported us for so long. And you can join them all at patreon.com/leanintoart, where you will find all the shows that we produce, as well as the extra leans, the shows that we record only for people who support us on Patreon. Those posts become an open mic where you can talk about whatever you want in a safe place where only fellow leaners hang out. Once again, patreon.com/leanintoart. And I guess thanks everybody for, believing in us there.
Yeah, we super appreciate it. And I think it's really fun that lots of these names recur again, and they're sticking with us. They believe in us, and it means a lot. Thank you.
All right. So how about some ancient wisdom? That's the name of this track.
Is it?
Yeah. It's from the Transformers soundtrack from season 3, the 19 post Transformers the movie soundtrack. Oh wow, they just stopped, didn't it? I meant to hit fade on it. Okay. Well, there we go. We're deep in the ancient wisdom now. Okay.
You might call that like a sudden change, much like a life event.
Yeah, there you go.
Didn't fade out.
Well done. Doesn't fade out, just stop sometimes.
Yeah. So you mentioned a place to begin this part where we start to think about ways to manage and things we've tried. Mm-hmm. Not prescriptions, but more thoughts on this. But starting with patience, and I don't know. And it's like you can pick a word and see that some concepts related to it. That would be useful, but like it doesn't mean it's accessible, right? So you can think about patience is a good idea. But it doesn't mean that you necessarily, you instantly possess it. So how in the world? Yeah, I didn't.
So
I have a lot about this one. Like where were you?
I have
about patience?
I have an example that maybe you can plug into with some of your own experiences in the past. So recently I was apartment hunting, and we actually went down to Columbus to look at different apartments that we could, live in, and see, measure out, okay, what's the commute going to be like? How far away is it from her work? Uh, what's the place like? What kind of updates does it have? Is it updated at all? What's the rent going to be versus commute versus comfort and so on, right? Um, and we made a lot of different appointments. I think we made appointments with like 7 different places. 5 we went through in one day. And
Wow.
in the beginning of the tours, the first couple tours, I can cop to feeling a sense of urgency. And we're only here 24 hours. We got to get back home and continue packing up the house and everything. Let's just sign a lease on the first place that isn't a dump. Right? The first place that is like moderately comfortable, and as long as it's under an hour to get to work, just take it, just so we can just get this done, because we got to keep moving, right? And then I took a breath and I was like, well, you made the appointments. Let's see it through and trust that you'll know when you found the right place, right? And if it doesn't trigger something in you, if it doesn't make you say like, nope, 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 this is the right one, then just keep looking. And between appointments, we had meetings together to talk about, like, here's where we're ranking everything so far. This is the most adequate, and here's the least adequate. And then we got to like one of the second to last ones. We're in the office doing the tour. I'm like, no, this is it. This is the one. We just know. They checked all the right boxes, and we don't need to go to the next appointment. We could throw out our list. Let's just sign something here because it felt right. Honest and for true, 15 minutes before that appointment, we almost didn't go. We almost decided well, I was pushing for it personally, going back to like one of the earlier places. Like, let's just go back to that place and just sign, just to get this over with. And then, Ann and I talked it through, and we were like, no, we made these appointments. Let's see it through. The next one was the right one, right? So when I think about the sense of patience, that it's not laziness. It's not saying like it'll work itself out, right? It's more of a calm attentiveness. Let's see it through. We'll come up with a schedule with an itinerary, which we did, and let's follow it through. And when the right time or the right opportunity presents itself, we'll know because we're paying attention. And when I was panicked and feeling that sense of urgency, I wasn't paying as much attention. Does that make sense?
Oh gosh, it totally makes sense. You framed that up so well. That example, I think, is so applicable to it reminding me of when I've done that well and when I've totally not.
Oh yeah, I've whiffed this more times than I haven't.
And so it's so funny. Sometimes the whole, like, even like a failed attempt or whiffing it, or buying into a situation that's sort of less than maybe you could be in, given a little bit of patience. It seems like, I don't know, let me just throw some dynamics that I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
Things like wisdom, remembering the past, remembering your past experiences and being able to apply them in context, right? Because remembering the past isn't enough. Remembering the past and like using it as a logs for a fear fire, that's also not a good idea.
Logs for a fear fire.
But
please tell me that's going to be a song someday in one of your comics.
Okay, fine. All right, so we'll write that down. But being able to relate to the past in a way that can bring it to useful context, and be able to say, like, I don't have this on my list. I've never done this before, right? That's not bad either. Having either, we've talked about this in the podcast before, but like a fixed mind, it's almost like pop culture, pop psychology, whatever, fixed mindset, growth mindset, right? The idea that you're not one or the other, like in different contexts and situations, how each of us thinks of things, we may have a little more sense of like fear and urgency and fixedness, where we're like, that's just the way it is. I am this, and that sort of limits your adaptability, right? When you're fixed. And it's fine. We all do it. But then in growth mindset, it's like you're willing to see that um, there's other possibilities, right? And yeah, and I'm sure everyone's heard that explained a bunch of different ways, but like, uh, and somehow as you're processing things, being open to adapting and change, then you're like you mentioned, you said exploring attentively, and that's like what I think of when I'm doing research well, and it's like personal research, right? I mean, like making choices about big events, like because not all big events happen to you. Sometimes you instigate big events, right? And um, exploring attentively and doing some almost, I don't know, journalism. You can be triangulating. You have some attributes, the things you care about, the things you want to have, the things you don't want to have. Um, and if you're using that as you're exploring, you're you're building up like a pretty clear understanding of what's currently going on to the best of your ability, right? And that's pretty useful. Like you had enough context in that situation, right? Like I've made like changes in career at different times where I've been on either side of that, where it's like sometimes it's been more calculating and then other times just stuff pops up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and it's not about saying like, well, you go ahead and get yourself a case of analysis paralysis. Just study forever. Don't choose. now you're now you're set. Something will happen to you, and that must be what was meant to be. Um, no, there is like some threshold where you just you're like, I think I know enough to try, and I know enough to know that I'm not going to be able to know much more because it's new to me or whatever. But I have sincerely explored. Uh, what's a good name for that? Being in that threshold where you're like, hmm, okay,
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what you would call that, but it was
because you
something
had that.
where,
Like,
yeah, and it wasn't just pure intuition, right? I if you asked me in the moment, I could tell you exactly why I knew it was the right thing, right? Because I
yeah,
had like gone through after each appointment, Ann and I like sat in the car and went through, like they do on those home buying shows, where Chad and Amy want a place close to the beach, you know. Um, we go through like a whole list of like, well, it's got this, but it doesn't got that, and so by talking through it, and we very carefully charted, like created a map of, or like a model of what our ideal scenario was, and then the urgency mindset came in, like this the sense of like, like we don't have much time, we got to move fast on this, um, and we got to get back home so we can continue getting everything settled. So then it turned into, well, what can we compromise on? Let's compromise and let's just get the thing that's like as close as possible, right? Which could have been the end of the
that's
story.
so powerful
But
because that's like saying, okay, you can list design constraints,
yeah,
get too many of them, right? But then which ones are more important, which ones are less important, and all that.
hmm.
That's huge. For
So when we went to that next place, and like we there was like this big area of pain points that none of the places were addressing, and we were kind of shrugging our shoulders, going like, well, maybe what we want in that area isn't available to us in Columbus. That could be. And then we get to this other place, and it's like, nope. Here's three things that are on that list that you really wanted, And we're like, okay, ding, ding, ding. I know exactly that this is the right
oh
place,
my
and
gosh,
we're ready to go.
that's so
So,
hard. That's another awesome thing you point out. There's
yeah,
this is it's like knowing knowing where you would having preferences and uh things that you weight heavier that you're like, oh, and you're doing your research and then you find that these are assumptions that don't match reality, right? At least so far. and
yeah,
and then you're like, well, how much farther do I go? Is this unrealistic or whatever? Which is awesome, insane, right? But yeah, that's so those I don't know. I'm really yeah. I'm hoping that I can apply that kind of approach on like other in my own big life change type things.
it, I can. look back on gigs I've taken on, art, drawing gigs, where I've been a very poor match for the gig, and it was because I didn't. I think part of the reason I was a poor match was because I didn't do that kind of analysis of like, what do I want out of this thing? Does this job bring me any closer to something else I want? And like these were situations where I would be like, well, you got to compromise. Work is work, and you just say yes because you're trying to build a career for yourself, and they become sort of uh, diversions from the path that I wanted to take because I didn't. I and the warning signs were there. Like in retrospect, I'm like, yes, I should have realized that like the gut feeling I had about this or that or this aspect of it where I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, well, you got to work. Um, were things where I had an opportunity to not get deeply involved in this thing, right? So
Yeah,
that's what I mean when I say I whiffed it a lot in the past. Like on jobs, I've whiffed it pretty hard.
I'm familiar with this thing from personal experience as well. Um, so, but that's a neat thing. So, how in the world? Okay, so patience then. So, how do you either um, buy it, store it, rent it? Uh, like where can you get that?
Where do you get
Where can I
patience?
get me some patience?
Well, you find a little green guy in a bog, and
Mm.
he makes you stand on your head a lot, and then reprimands you when you can't lift big, heavy things, and then eventually you learn to be more patient after you run away from him, and then get parts of your body dismembered.
That's true.
Um,
You, once your first hand gets cut off, you're like, all right.
I
I
shouldn't have done
think I
that.
think I get what he meant now.
No,
Okay.
I don't. Where does patience come from? In my case, it came from having a partner who knows me really well, who is, you know, is keyed into my micro expressions on my face and could tell when I'm starting to get a little keyed up, uh, and is ready to talk me down. Uh, but I think this comes. I don't. It's a combination of intuition and patient, careful observation, right? Um, it's like we were talking about in the last episode with the art meditation. This whole when I was trying to use the errant thought of, oh, that's turning into a thing, and use that as an opportunity to bump myself back off of that track and say, nope, it's not a thing. Like I'm starting to draw a shape, and that shape is reminding me of this object. I'm going to start drawing that object. Nope, it's not that object. Start drawing another shape.
Hmm.
Draw another kind of line. Um, that kind of like that's what I would call that patient observation. Is like not is like maybe we had this discussion on the show, but like I've had experiences throughout my life and in some different life events where like I would get angry about it and then I would get angry at myself for getting angry about it and it would start this echo chamber of anger where I'm just like just beating myself up in my head over like this redoubling anger over something that you have no reason to be angry about this. Stop being so angry, jerk, you know? Um and like that's like a real fight. That's a battle in your head whereas like I
Mhm.
like when Ann talked me back down and we went to that last appointment, it was more like, all right, let's see. And I'm listening, I'm looking, listening. And maybe that thought came in like, dude, you gotta stop fooling around and just, make a choice. Okay, I heard you. That thought happened. And now I'm looking again, right? Um,
Mm. That's interesting. So, like, I mean, practicing being, uh, I guess, a practicing being an observer among the different perspectives that you may hold simultaneously, right?
yeah.
So that's what I'm hearing, and I think that makes sense. But then just um, gosh, there's something else to it of mm, eh, having that there's an underlying trust. That's what I'm hearing too, where it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
this process is going to play out better if I allow it to play out and keep at a thing that I really think should be part of this. Like the drawing meditatively thing that,
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like an interesting, like low risk way to explore.
Another thing I think about is like, I used to do a podcast called The Comics Are Great podcast, and it was essentially a one-on-one interview show. I wanted it to be more of a roundtable. That's a whole other thing, and I tried to get it to be a roundtable, but it turned into me interviewing people one-on-one. And I started a long time ago. What was it, like 2010? I think I did it for a few years. 2011 maybe. Anyway, um, I remember a lesson I learned on that show was um, when you're in a conversation with somebody and maybe you've got some agendas that you want to go through, you got some points that you want to bring up. I found out that if I tried to push those things into the conversation too early, or if I didn't wait for the right time, if I didn't listen for the right time, the conversations would go awkwardly. And the moment I said, you know what? I did a lot of research on this person. I read a lot of stuff about him. I listened to a lot of conversation with them. This is thoroughly researched. The right things will come up naturally in the conversation if I just freaking listen to them. If I just listen to what they have to say, and I'll give them their prompt. I'll ask them a question. And you can hear in some episodes I talk completely over top of the other person, right? And there's ones where I do a lot more listening, and then like they will lead to the thing that I wanted to bring into the conversation because it was something that related to them in the first place. It was pulled from their biography, right? And I trusted that my research would pay off. And I think it was something where the moment I did it, I thought, ooh, I've had a lot of conversations when I was younger where I was trying so hard to insert, look at what I know. Do you guys know what I know? I know things, and here they are for you, right? So I think about that when I think about like what you're describing, this sense of like trusting that this thing will play out. I'm a participant. I'm not passive, but like I'm waiting for the moment where, again, go back to that apartment example. There was a moment where the apartment manager said, "So what do you think?" Okay, now I can say, but I don't need to say until then, right? I'm just observing right now.
There's I think that's a really great way to look at it, and it sounds incredibly useful. I think when I try to use that as well, like if I'm in a situation where I'm facilitating a collaborative experience, and it's about maybe generating some ideas, but then narrowing down and in refining and all that kind of stuff. I mean, typical um, broad brush creative process things. And if I or others would have like too prescriptive of an agenda or too prescriptive of a way to map a goal to, a particular approach or whatever, it's like there's something about a process and letting things play out that I think it helps me clarify my thoughts along the way by staying tuned in to what's happening as it goes. And so like when you do sort of jump in and it's like even and how you jump in, it can make a big difference too, because you can jump in and in like, so like you could be, well, hey, this is about the thing I was thinking about, and I didn't really, relate it to what you just said. I just wanted to throw something into the empty space that was about me. And you can do that, which isn't always the most successful thing unless you're the highest paid person in the room, and then you don't need the meeting anyway. Save everyone time. Anyway, that's a separate topic. Let's see. But the finding a way that's where it relates or it doesn't, right? Where you're like, hey, I have a new understanding, and now I'm adapting, right? And rolling with the real situation that's going on. And I think that when I've not been patient and I haven't adapted, that's where I think I can stoke up my sense of urgency, and I'm like, somehow, so the thing just I'm not receptive enough to see what actually is going on, and that's when I'm not doing it right. That's what I do. So interesting. And interviews, gosh, that makes a lot of sense too. That's
Right, right. Because like
really
the example, the urgency of an interview is that the thought that was always on my mind was I don't want anybody to get bored. Right, I'm trying to make this thing into like this sustainable, growing thing, and I want to build an audience around it. And I've already got a hard sell, and then I'm saying like I'm going to have in-depth process and philosophical conversations with cartoonists. Which I mean, to me, that's an easy sell. That sounds great. Tell me more. But I know that like if I want this to be something that the general public is going to be on board with, boy, I got to keep it interesting. And in order to keep it interesting, I have to get bored before anybody else does. And I interpreted that mandate as keep things moving. You know, keep it peppy and snappy. You know, don't linger on a point. So
that's funny. That must be your inner voice, because I don't think I've ever heard you facilitate an interview like that. Yeah, nice anecdote. Okay, what about the next highlight in your career? Huh? Okay, that doesn't have to take so long.
Boy, oh boy, that was a lot of words. Okay, next question. No, I don't. I hope I was never that rude to anybody that I interviewed.
That's a funny dichotomy here too. Like we didn't really go there too, but like, I mean, we did a little bit where it's like being patient with the different, you know, distracted mind things where it's like, yeah, okay, I know this fear came up. I wish this would go faster, whatever. Right. But you know, those things don't have to become what participates in the room or.
Well, yeah, that goes back to what we were talking about last week too with the meditative drawings is like, you know what? Pause buttons are great. Like just taking a second before I open my mouth to stop and go like, okay, where is this coming from? Does this come from a good place? Is this something that's appropriate to the moment? It doesn't take long to think that through. So yeah. All right. So are we coming up on final thought time?
Well, I think we're getting really close there. I think
okay.
Yeah. That's well, I think you're reading my mind through a Google Doc.
Way to open up the curtain, Rob.
Backstage hand waving. Hey, psst.
Yeah.
Look away.
This is something we do throughout the show while we're talking through an idea. Is like one of us will be highlighting different parts of the Google Doc for the other one to see, to say like, hey, let's do this part next. Okay. So how about in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, we'll get to our final thought. Do you want to tease it, Rob?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I think there's one or two things that we can think of that we've let's see. How do we contextualize this stuff and in a way that helps, where it's like big changes going on, I'm trying to be patient, and what are some things that we reach for that help out?
Okay, cool. That sounds fantastic. So in about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, we'll talk about that. We talk about contextualizing, how we step back, look at a broader perspective, and how we think about our, not just the goals for what we do, but like what are the goals for how we do what we do, and what are the necessary ingredients to help us better do what we do, and how like navigating this life change helps us, you know, identify and clarify those things. Hope that wasn't too abstract. It'll be worth it. Stick around. Minute and a half to 2 minutes. Got to thank some people who make this show.
It's the apex of abstract, right? It's not. It's like we've built up to this.
That's Rob's subtitle, by the way, is Apex Abstractor. You're like the shark of abstraction.
Let's generalize it.
All right. Okay, we got to thank some more people who make the show possible. Those people happen to be us. We make stuff, and we hope that you will interact with the stuff that we make. And the thing that I make that I would like to draw your attention to this week is the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival's Kids Comics Awards, the 2019 Kids Comics Awards. Now, this is, I think it's going to be the 7th annual Awards, and it's a the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival is this free comics event that I've been putting on. This will be our 10th anniversary this year. I'm one of the co-organizers of it, and I actually develop most of the programming for the show, or coordinate the programming. I don't develop it as much. The artists develop it. But one of the events that I help put together is this award show, and it is a comics award where the trophy are these cute little Lego figurines, and they are given to artists and cartoonists and writers, but kids choose the winners. And right now we have open nominations, and it's for kids only. So the reason I'm bringing this up on this show is many of the people who listen to the show are cartoonists. And if you had something published, or if you made a comic, if you self-publish it in 2018, you should tell your constituency that they can nominate you to be on the final ballot, on which kids will vote at the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, and the winners will be announced on Sunday. What is it? Sunday, June 16th, 2019. So the address is a2caf.com/KC Awards. I will link to it in the show notes. I encourage you to tell your cartoonist friends if they made a comic for young people in 2018. Tell them to mobilize their fan base. It's a way to get your comic on the final ballot, and we only take votes from kids. So, Rob, you make a game.
I do make a game called This Panda Needs You. And I want to actually talk about podcasts I make that I just made a change to the show notes seconds ago. So yeah,
I apologize.
this-panda.com for that game. It's mellow block stacking things, and that is something I make. Super proud of it, and it's available on lots of platforms, probably one that you own, and it's great for you, great for your kids. So Art and Science Punks. This is a podcast that I do with my wife, Kate Shield Stenzinger. It came up earlier in the show, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to promote it and just put it into the, one of these ad spots. I mean, we have the ad spots on here because we do lean into art, but we do other projects, and we do think there's a good chance you're going to like these other things that we do. And in this case, it's pretty directly related, as it's a podcast. It's not really about the same kinds of things that we talk about on Lean Into Art. It's more about, the family context, the significant other collaborating and enjoying a variety of things in our life related to celebrating art and science. So that's, sometimes we talk about, overlappy things with Lean Into Art, like goal planning, right? But it's more the behind the scenes, what it looks like at, in our family context, right? We talk about fun projects, creative activities that we do, and various where things go well and where things don't go well. And we always celebrate something art and something science related that's caught our attention every week. So you can check that out at artsciencepunks.fireside.fm.
And we will link to that in the show notes.
There's like over 60 episodes, I think. So
I was trying to pull up the episodes link is right there. Oh my goodness. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Episode 61. Yeah, so 61 episodes. So if you're waiting for more thoughtful conversation with Rob in between episodes of Lean Into Art, you've got 61 episodes of Art and Science Punks to consume. And Kate Shield Stenzinger is like easily one of the most charming podcast hosts I've ever listened to in my entire life. It's fun to listen to her very gently and lovingly give Rob the business sometimes, cornering him with really thoughtful questions and listening to Rob try to squirm his way out, intellectually speaking. Art and Science Punks. But let's suppose that you're here because you like the way we think about stuff. You're not so much interested in the stuff that we make. Fair enough. The show is a thing we make too, and there are self-contained videos that you can download at the price of your choosing at leanintoart.com/workshops. If you're listening to the show via podcatcher like iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, giving the show a 5-star review helps more people find it. If you're watching the video on YouTube right now, giving the thumbs up button, like and subscribe, as they say. That helps more people find the show as well. And we thank everybody who has been doing exactly those things. It means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Final
thought. Thinking about, ways that we, try to tap into the patients. I have I have one. I don't
Hmm.
know. Is there this is something we've talked about before, but it's the idea of reframing, and there's this kind of quick set of steps that sometimes I do them all, sometimes I don't, but it's acknowledging that well, I'm doing this because of this bigger goal, right? And I I believe in doing this, and I think my life is more meaningful for doing it. It does, and it's the fact that it's difficult and stressful. It doesn't necessarily change the idea that I really want to do this and believe in it. So um, that I I guess it's sort of it's like permission to keep doing it. So it's not like I have to have this argument with myself to say, well, this is uncomfortable. Stop. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable because I'm not going to stop. And this is why. So, remember these, this is the goals, the reasons I'm here.
Yeah. Is this an appropriate place to bring up the coat of arms,
Yeah, that's a
or
handy one.
is that too big of a step back?
I don't think it's a big step back. I think it's related. Uh, it's a, it comes up. So has that been useful for you personally?
Well, it's made me attentive to language that serves that function in my life. So let's describe it real quick for those who are new to the show, and then I can
Right on.
explain how it's been useful to me.
Okay, so you called it the coat of arms, and I think that makes sense. That title has stuck. And one day I was thinking of things and I journaled them and I shared it with Jerzy and I said, "Hey, Jerzy, this is the kind of thing I want to. I think what I want to do as far as my professional commitments, I think they should fit these four criteria. And you can dig deeper into them or whatever, but like broad brush, these four criteria. I seek to, number one, do what I love. Number two, for a community I care about. Number three, using tools and methods I believe in. Number four, to engage in a sustainable trade."
Sure.
And yeah, and so I'm like, well, gigs I do they fulfill? And how
Bake
well?
for bake for 45 years, and you have a recipe for nobility. The earned nobility of King Arthur's court, not the inherited nobility of royalty.
Okay.
I always have to make that distinction with my young students because they're like, well, you could be a noble lord and be a real jerk. I'm like, well, that's a different definition of nobility. I'm talking about like Lancelot nobility. I'm talking about Gawain, those guys. Um,
Sure. It's behavior versus I don't know what that's called.
Inherited status.
There you go.
Um, so it, the way you were able to abstract that out and break it down into here's this rubric, here's this system of things that I go through to say like, well, what I am doing, does it fall into all those four categories? Those
Yeah,
four,
can I love it? Do I love it? You can test it in every one of those ways.
yeah.
I mean, do I
So
believe in this community and yeah, and who they're serving and whatever.
so like I've just become more alert to when anybody uses language that helps me define why I do what I do. And like my friend Jesse said to me just as observation one day, and I'm so grateful for this because it's been immensely useful to me. That I just found so much utility in that sentence. Is that he said, observing how I interact with young people in my classroom, he said, it's really important to young people. I think that for a grown up who is not their parents to look them in the eye and say, "You matter, and what you do matters." Right. And I was like, yes, that's the function I get to serve, right? And that's if I'm doing that in addition to all the other stuff I'm doing, like that's like the core of what I'm doing, right? So that's like a great wayfinding tool, especially when things get intense and I'm like, ooh, what was I doing today? That was a tough class. Those kids were really unruly. But did I do that? Right? Did I serve that primary function? Okay, that's why I do what I do. But there's other things too. I mean, like not just like mission driven stuff. I think about um how do like one of the things that we're navigating with this whole big move thing is like defining what we even want out of this new life. Yes, there's this exciting new position. That's a whole thing. But like all the other stuff that goes into, well, now we have to uproot ourselves and start a new life in a new place. what are we even looking for? And it's so funny. I had a conversation with a real estate agent this morning talking about putting my house on the market. And he said, "What's your favorite thing about living here?" As we start to build the story of like what's so great about this house. And I had like the answer, like I was like, "Okay, I'll tell you." And I just like barreled into him with like these 40 things that I loved about this place. And he was like, "Oh, I wish I would have recorded that. That was really good. Could you do that again? I just video you. And it's because Ann and I have sat down and thought about it a lot, and like had a lot of discussions about it. And I was like, yes, it's like I really like that. I don't have to rely on a car. Like we can bike. We're on 3 different bus lines. It's trivially easy to get to where we work downtown. And yes, we can use a car, or we don't have to. Like I like that flexibility and freedom. So that became, guess what, a criteria when we were apartment hunting, right? Like, well, how many bus lines is it on? Does it have access to a bike path of some sort? That kind of thing. Um, so you talk about like, one of your favorite things, spreadsheeting, and I have got the bug. I like putting things into spreadsheets and lists, and start out with just like barfing out all the information and then start to contextualize it into buckets, right?
Hmm. I think it's a really handy tool. That I mean, your process is solid, so just open spreadsheet, barf, and then use buckets to sort. But what it looks like is things the things you're thinking of, but then also how do you describe them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the uh, it could be things you're trying to evaluate as different options or alternatives, and then what is it about the things that matter, right? And so, like, that the vertical list is the things, and then the horizontal attributes are what matters.
Yeah.
And you can use the what matters every single attribute as a way to make an observation on everything in the list. And and I think it's handy if some of those observations are like a constrained set of labels, and also just numbers, ranking them. As long as you're telling what you're doing with the ranking, you're like thoughtful about what it means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Like so, for instance, when you think about like living in any city, space is going to be invertly proportional to the proximity to the downtown area, right?
Mhm.
Like the closer you get to downtown, the smaller the space that you're going to be able to afford. And so, yes, you can afford more space as you get further out. So, like finding the sweet spot for you, that kind of thing, those kind of trade offs and navigating that, and like by ranking stuff and by continually revisiting that ranking and evaluating the ranking and basing it on quantitative data. Well, how much did I actually use my bike this year? Versus qualitative data. Oh, remember that night when we rode our bikes to Lucky's Market and rode it back, and we had a really marvelous time, and we were just like relishing in the freedom of being able to move around like that without having to worry about parking a car, right?
Mm.
Having all those discussions together and having a discussion with yourself. So,
I think that's a big topic, right? In and of itself, using spreadsheets to decide things. But like, even if the you're just rough drafting and just scratching the surface, they're going to be helpful, and uh, get you some fresh perspective on what you're already thinking.
hmm.
Hmm.
Well, I think we did a podcast, Rob.
I'd
Um,
I'd call it one.
okay, I declare this a podcast. But let's dog ear that one about using spreadsheets to decide things. I think that's a great idea for a show. Um,
Yeah, cool beans. Let's do it.
and
And
and maybe bring in some friends who also use spreadsheets to
all
decide
right,
things, so we can learn some new secrets.
right on. Reach out to us,
Yeah,
and or uh, throw your name out and people their name out that if they'd be comfortable chatting about how they use spreadsheets.
that'd be good. All right. Well, thank you, Rob, for this discussion. I think this was a fun and interesting one. It is. I always enjoy talking about meaningful stress with you.
I enjoy it, and I find it meaningfully stressful to do so
Oh.
in this public forum.
All right, we record this show every week on Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. We stream it live on YouTube and then collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. Is there anything else that I need to add to that? No. We stream it live so you can participate in the chat client, and then, you can contribute to the conversation while we have it. You can always read the chat as it happens on YouTube as well. All right, we'll be back in a week with another show. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm turning off the live stream. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.